Well, welcome viewers, Dr. Jason W. Morrison, Theologist, New South Wales, Australia, and I've decided to, as far as I can, rerun the Australian Royal Commission videos on the channel. I just don't want people to forget what happened back there. Obviously, the Jehovah Witnesses are pretty ignorant of the Australian Royal Commission. So I'm going to do everything I can to try and run these videos. It's going to be lengthy, but I want to open it with Barbara Anderson's Watchtower documents. I'll put the link below. The Australian Royal Commission by Barbara Anderson. An Australian Royal Commission held formal public hearings to examine evidence about child sexual abuse within religious and charitable organisations in that country, in Australia, in my country. There are over 30 of these ongoing investigations involving a large number of religions and charities. Each public hearing examined a number of individual case studies involving different public and private organisations. Jehovah Witnesses were among the religious organisations being investigated. The Commission wanted to know specifically how Jehovah Witnesses and the Watchtower Society responded to allegations of child abuse involving members of their congregations. In 2015, the Royal Commission's public hearings involving Jehovah Witnesses were scheduled and heard in Sydney starting on Monday, July the 27th, and continued through to August 14th, 2015. The intent of the hearings was to investigate the actual practices and policies of the Jehovah Witnesses and Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Australia Limited in situations of reported and suspected child abuse or endangerment. Following up hearings were scheduled for spring 2017 to review the Watchtower of Australia's policy changes and plans for corrective action. 2017. On March 10, 2017, the Commission held follow-up hearings to hear the Watchtower representatives' descriptions of any corrective actions taken by the Australian branch of Jehovah Witnesses over the past 18 months. More than 5 hours of sessions, the Commission was not satisfied and clearly disappointed with the testimony and voiced their displeasure with the efforts and official responses by the Watchtower branch representatives. Now that's serious. You can follow this link if you want to hear the hearings. And I'm going to put these hearings up in this rerun of the Australian Royal Commission program. The scope and purpose of the hearings were to inquire into the experiences of survivors of child sexual abuse within the Jehovah Witness Church in Australia, the response of the Jehovah Witness Church and the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Australia Limited to allegations, reports or complaints of child sexual abuse within the Church, the systems, policies and procedures in place within the Jehovah Witnesses Church and the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Australia Limited for raising and responding to allegations of or concerns about child sexual abuse within the Church, and the systems, policies and procedures in place within the Jehovah Witness Church and the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Australia Limited to prevent child sexual abuse within the Church. During and after the hearings, the Commission provided witness lists, transcripts, exhibits, images and associated submissions for each case study and makes them publicly available on the Commission's website. And you can go to that website yourself if you want the evidence. Submissions. After hearing, the Council assisting the Royal Commission will provide witnesses and other people who were granted leave to appear at the hearing a written submission detailing what was discovered during the case study. The submission will outline key findings based on the hearing evidence and the recommendations likely to come from them. The recipients of the submission may then provide their own written submissions in reply. The Commissioners then consider this information and when they form their final recommendations during the course of the Royal Commission. In the articles below you will find videos of the live streams of the public hearings and transcripts of those hearings and complete sets of the exhibits used by the Commission that were provided by those involved in the case. Many of these exhibits have never been publicly available before. And here's some of the stuff you can see. But I'm going to go now to live footage from the Australian Royal Commission on the Jehovah Witnesses, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, Church organisation. I hope you enjoy this series.
Mr. Speaker, today as a nation, we confront our failure to listen, to believe and to provide justice. And again today we say sorry. To the children we failed, sorry. To the parents whose trust was betrayed and who have struggled to pick up the pieces, sorry. To the whistleblowers who we did not listen to, sorry. To the spouses, partners, wives, husbands, children who have dealt with the consequences of the abuse, cover-ups and obstruction, sorry. To generations past and present, sorry. We honour every survivor in this country. We love you, we hear you and we honour you. No matter if you are here at this meeting place or elsewhere, this apology is to you and for you. Your presence and participation makes tangible our work today, and it gives strength to others who are yet to share what has happened in their world. And later, when the speeches are over and we stand in silence and we remember the victims who are not with us anymore, many too sadly by their own hand. As a nation, we failed them, we forsook them, and that will always be our shame. This apology is for them and their families too. Not just as a father, but as a Prime Minister, I am angry too at the calculating destruction of lives and the abuse of trust, including those who have abused the shield of faith and religion to hide their crimes, a shield that is supposed to protect the innocent, not the guilty, and they stand condemned. I simply say, I believe you, we believe you, your country believes you.
Was replaced with an updated compilation of articles entitled Shepherd the Flock of God, which is now the primary text from which an elder takes guidance on his congregation. Additional information in support of the Jehovah's Witness Church's theocratic policies is made available to congregation members through the Watchtower and Awake magazines and other publications. Rodney Spinks of the Service Department will give evidence that the current policies of the Jehovah's Witness Church for dealing with an accusation of child sexual abuse are outlined in the following 4 publications. Firstly, the Bible. The English edition is the New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures. Secondly, the Elder's Handbook. Thirdly, Watchtower Society publications such as Organized to Do Jehovah's Will. And fourthly, letters sent to all bodies of elders, in particular a letter dated 1 October 2012, which consolidated and replaced into one letter the spiritual advice and guidance provided in various past letters from preceding years as to how Jehovah's Witnesses handle allegations of child sexual abuse. Evidence will be put before the Royal Commission that the current policies and procedures relating to child sexual abuse within the Jehovah's Witness Church are supplemented, in particular, by the following material. First, a pivotal Watchtower article entitled Let Us Abhor What Is Wicked, published in January 1997, which clarified in biblical terms the principles to which a congregation should have regard in considering how a child molester should be viewed and treated. And secondly, updated guidelines issued by the governing body to all branch officers in August 2013 regarding how service desks should field questions from elders regarding child abuse matters. Elders within the Jehovah's Witness Church are given periodic training on the implementation of its policies and procedures. The training takes the form of one-day programs or seminars called Kingdom Ministry Schools. There will be evidence regarding the established disciplinary procedure adopted by the Church for responding to allegations of child sexual abuse in Australia. Documents will be tendered and evidence given showing that the Jehovah's Witness Church considers that it is only authorized to address child sexual abuse in accordance with scriptural direction. The Jehovah's Witness Church recognizes child abuse to be a gross sin and crime. Its official position is that they abhor child sexual abuse and will not protect any perpetrator of such repugnant acts. Child sexual abuse is defined by the Jehovah's Witness Church as follows. Child sexual abuse generally includes sexual intercourse with a minor, oral or anal sex with a minor, fondling the genitals, breasts or buttocks of a minor, voyeurism of a minor, indecent exposure to a minor, soliciting a minor for sexual conduct, or any kind of involvement with child pornography. Depending on the circumstance of the case, it may also include sexting with a minor. Sexting describes the sending of nude photos, semi-nude photos, or sexually explicit text messages electronically, such as by phone. According to the Jehovah's Witness Church, child sexual abuse is captured by the scriptural offenses, firstly, porneia, which is immoral use of the genitals between two people, and secondly, brazen or loose conduct, which includes fondling of breasts, explicitly immoral proposals, showing pornography to a child, voyeurism, indecent exposure, and thirdly, gross uncleanliness, which is heavy petting. Jehovah's Witnesses are taught from the Bible that they have a personal responsibility to report wrongdoing to elders. If the wrongdoer does not voluntarily come forward, upon receipt of an allegation, elders are directed to immediately call the branch office for direction based on the circumstances of each case. 2 elders from the congregation are also directed to immediately call the legal department for legal advice on mandatory reporting obligations. The legal department is instructed to refer the elders to the service department for scriptural direction on theocratic or judicial aspects of the case and how to spiritually comfort and support the victim. The service department also provides guidance on when and how elders should interview a young victim of child abuse. 2 elders are directed to investigate every allegation of child sexual abuse by speaking with the victim, the alleged offender, and any other witnesses if necessary. The weight given to the testimony of youths is at the discretion of the investigating elders. Elders are not authorized to take congregational action unless the child sexual abuse is proven according to biblical standards, which are satisfied by evidence of a confession from the accused or the testimony of 2 credible witnesses to the same incident, or the testimony of 2 witnesses to separate incidents of the same kind of wrongdoing, or strong circumstantial evidence testified to by at least 2 witnesses. Whereby those rules, there is insufficient evidence to substantiate the alleged child sexual abuse, the matter is held in abeyance, and the elders are directed to, quote, remain vigilant with regard to the conduct and activity of the accused. In this event, no further action is taken in relation to the complaint, and the matter is left in Jehovah's hands. If sufficient evidence is discovered, the elders must determine whether a judicial committee should be appointed to give scriptural discipline to the wrongdoer. Child sexual abuse is recognized as an offense for which a judicial committee should be formed. The Royal Commission will hear that over the past 65 years, the requirement that there be 2 or more witnesses has prevented at least 125 allegations of child sexual abuse from proceeding to a judicial committee. That is not unexpected, given that by its nature, there are very seldom witnesses to child sexual abuse beyond the survivor and the perpetrator. The judicial committee is comprised of 3 or more elders to determine, firstly, if the individual is guilty of violating God's laws, and secondly, whether the individual is genuinely repentant. Repentant involves a deep regret over a damaged relationship with Jehovah, remorse over the reproach brought upon Jehovah's name, and a severe longing to come back into God's favor. Documents will be tendered which show that the Jehovah's Witnesses consider that the degree of repentance ought to be commensurate with the degree of deviation. The Royal Commission will hear that since 1950, 563 alleged perpetrators of child sexual abuse were the subject of a judicial committee hearing. The judicial committee has wide-ranging sanctions available to it to deal with proven wrongdoing. If the wrongdoer is unrepentant, he is to be disfellowshipped from the congregation. To be disfellowshipped means to be excommunicated from or cast out of the Jehovah's Witness Church. Congregation members are directed not to associate with disfellowshipped persons. Disfellowshipping differs from disassociation, which is an action taken by an individual who no longer wants to be known as a Jehovah's Witness. If the wrongdoer is judged to be genuinely repentant, the sanction is to administer reproof of the wrongdoer. Reproval may be public or private, and is a lesser form of discipline that allows the wrongdoer to remain a member of the congregation. Public reproval is administered before onlookers and serves to discipline the wrongdoer whilst warning the congregation that wrongdoing has been committed. Private reproval involves telling the accused that he is reproved before only those aware of the wrongdoing. A person who is judicially reproved is disqualified from special privileges, such as serving in a position of authority. Judicial restrictions are also imposed on those who are reproved. The restrictions might include being counseled by the elders about appropriate behavior with children. A public announcement is made to the congregation regarding the fact, but not the grounds, of disfellowshipping or reproval. The Royal Commission will hear that since 1950, 401 alleged perpetrators of child sexual abuse were disfellowshipped, 78 of whom were disfellowshipped on more than one occasion, and 190 alleged perpetrators of child sexual abuse were reproved, 11 of whom were reproved on more than one occasion. Disfellowshipping decisions may be appealed within 7 days. Appeal committees are formed even if there seems to be no valid basis for it, comprising, to the extent possible, impartial elders from a different congregation who hear the case ab initio. A disfellowshipped person may be reinstated into the congregation after the passage of sufficient time if the judicial committee determines that the individual is truly repentant and the reasons for their removal from the congregation have been abandoned. In all cases of reinstatement, documents will be tendered which show that congregational restrictions should be applied. Since 1950, of 401 disfellowshipped alleged perpetrators of child sexual abuse, 230 were later reinstated, 35 of whom were reinstated on more than one occasion. The case study will explore a number of risk management measures that the Jehovah's Witness Church has in place regarding how a congregation might deal with a person against whom an accusation of child molestation has been made. Mr. O'Brien will give evidence that the Jehovah's Witness Church believes that loving and protective parents are the best deterrent to child abuse. Mr. O'Brien's evidence will be that it is the position of the Jehovah's Witness Church that parental education of children about sex and the dangers of child sexual abuse can be a major factor in its prevention. He will say that the Jehovah's Witness Church continues to educate parents via study groups and publications to help protect their children from child sexual abuse. Documents will be tendered which show that the Jehovah's Witness Church considers the primary responsibility for the protection of children lies with parents. Mr. O'Brien will say that this is particularly so as the Jehovah's Witness Church does not have programs or facilities that separate children from their parents, such as schools or Sunday schools and so on. Mr. O'Brien will give evidence that elders are directed to report allegations of child abuse to authorities where mandatory reporting laws apply. The Royal Commission will hear evidence from Vincent Toole of the Legal Department of his understanding of the various mandatory reporting obligations that apply across Australian states. Documents will be tendered which show that if no mandatory reporting obligations apply, elders are directed that they do not themselves need to report. The evidence will show that where a matter becomes known to the authorities, elders are directed to disclose information in their possession where legally required to do so, unless ecclesiastical privilege applies. The Royal Commission will hear evidence that elders are directed never to discourage or sanction anyone from reporting an allegation of child sexual abuse to the authorities, and that if asked, they must make clear that this is a personal decision and a victim's absolute right. The Royal Commission will hear evidence from at least one survivor witness who, contrary to this policy, was discouraged from reporting her abuse to secular authorities by elders in the Jehovah's Witness Church. Documents will be tendered which show this is consistent with the Jehovah's Witnesses policy not to resort to secular courts to resolve personal disputes with fellow Christians, but to rely on the elders. Evidence will be put before the Royal Commission that of the 1,006 alleged perpetrators of child sexual abuse identified by the Jehovah's Witness Church since 1950, not one was reported by the Church to secular authorities. This suggests that it is the practice of the Jehovah's Witness Church to retain information regarding child sexual abuse offences, but not to report allegations of child sexual abuse to the police or other relevant authorities. This case study will consider whether the practice of the Jehovah's Witnesses Church of not reporting allegations of child sexual abuse to secular authorities potentially exposes members of the Church to criminal liability for concealment of serious indictable offences under Section 316 of the Crimes Act of 1900 in New South Wales, and failure to disclose sexual offences against minors under Section 327 of the Crimes Act 1958 of the State of Victoria. The case study will consider the interaction of these offences with the confessional privilege provided for in Section 127 of the Evidence Act of 1995 of the Commonwealth and replicated legislation in force in New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania, and the Northern Territory. It is anticipated that documents will be tendered before the Royal Commission which will show that the Australia Branch Office have considered that confessional privilege would apply in circumstances where the perpetrator confessed to a child sexual abuse.
Yeah, Dr. Jason Morrison, theologist again. I just want to say thank you for watching the videos, and I hope you got plenty of self-rediscovery and freedom out of it. If you watched it on YouTube, please share or like, maybe even comment. If you watched it on Facebook, like, comment, share. But most of all, get out and live. This isn't a rehearsal. You've got a one-off life. Don't let your loyalty and your faithfulness blind you to the life that you should be experiencing. Till the next video, thank you for watching, and bye for now.